Before we journey into the shadows of the Roman Empire, you must first forget everything you think you know about love and marriage. Erase the images of star-crossed lovers and lifelong soulmates. In the world of ancient Rome, the marital bed was not a place of romance. It was a boardroom. Marriage was a cold, calculated transaction, a business deal struck between powerful families. Its purpose was threefold: to merge fortunes, to forge political alliances, and to produce legitimate heirs to carry on a family name. Love was an irrelevant, almost frivolous consideration. Because of this, fidelity as we understand it simply didn't exist for Roman husbands. Affairs were not shameful secrets whispered in hallways. They were an open, expected, and entirely normal feature of a powerful man's life. A man could have casual flings with courtesans, keep long-term mistresses, and engage in a wide spectrum of relationships outside the home without a hint of social stigma. This system was designed to protect the wife from the dangers of constant childbirth in an era with no contraception, but it also opened the door to a world of desire that operated on a completely different set of rules, especially when it involved other men. To truly understand Roman sexuality, you have to grasp one central concept. Their world was not organized by identity, but by power. They had no words for gay or straight. Instead, every interaction was viewed through the lens of dominance and submission. Who was the giver and who was the receiver? In a relationship between a man and a woman, the roles were rigidly defined by society. The man was the dominant, active partner, reinforcing his masculine authority. But when two men were involved, the equation became far more complex and dangerous. One man had to assume the submissive receiver role, a position that Roman society viewed as inherently feminine and passive. For a freeborn Roman citizen, to willingly take on this role carried a profound social stigma, as it was seen as an abdication of his masculinity. However, this taboo was often relaxed in relationships between an older, powerful man, Theorastes, and a teenage boy, the Eromenos. This practice, a form of pederasty, was often seen as a mentorship, a way for a young man to gain social and political connections from his powerful benefactor. It was a system built on a power imbalance, where desire was the currency for advancement and influence. Against this backdrop of transactional relationships, the story of Emperor Hadrian and the young man Antinous stands out as a shocking and beautiful exception. Hadrian, though married to a woman for political duty, showed her little affection. Historical accounts suggest their marriage was never consummated, as Hadrian's heart and attention were devoted almost entirely to men. And one young man captured him completely: Antinous, a Greek teenager of stunning beauty and sharp intellect. This was no mere mentorship or casual affair. Hadrian adored him, providing him with a first-class education and making him a constant companion on his travels across the empire. Their bond was one of genuine, profound love. But this epic romance ended in unimaginable tragedy. While visiting Egypt, Antinous mysteriously drowned in the Nile River. Hadrian's response was not the quiet grief of an emperor. It was a world-shattering scream of anguish. He founded an entire city, Antinopolis, where his beloved had died. He had coins minted bearing Antinous' face, and, in the most radical act of all, he declared the boy a god, sparking a cult of worship that spread across the Roman world. In a society where relationships were disposable, Hadrian's grief was so immense that he tore a hole in the fabric of heaven to ensure his lover would live forever. Where Hadrian defied Roman norms with the depth of his love, Emperor Nero shattered them with the audacity of his spectacle. Other emperors kept their male lovers in the background, treating them as palace slaves. Nero, however, dragged his relationships onto the public stage. He staged not one, but two formal wedding ceremonies with men. In the first, he married a former slave named Pythagoras, but in a move that horrified the Roman elite, Nero himself played the role of the bride, complete with a traditional wedding veil. This was not a private act. It was a calculated piece of political theatre. For the emperor, the living symbol of Roman masculine power, to publicly cast himself in the submissive, feminine role was an unthinkable subversion of the natural order. It was a declaration that he was above the rules that governed all other men. Later, perhaps bowing to public pressure, he married another young man, Sporus. But this time, Nero took on the conventional role of the groom. This reversal showed how even an emperor as outrageous as Nero had to balance his personal desires against the rigid expectations of a society that demanded its leader be the ultimate dominant force. Nero's relationship with Sporus descends into a much darker story, revealing the terrifying cruelty that underpinned Roman power dynamics. While his first marriage was a shocking act of gender-bending theatre, his actions with Sporus were a brutal reaffirmation of his dominance. To ensure that no one could ever again question his masculine authority in the relationship, Nero ordered the young boy to be castrated. This was a horrific act of mutilation, done for the sole purpose of solidifying an image. By physically and permanently altering Sporus's body, Nero was making a public statement. I am the man, the giver, the one in control. Sporus was no longer just a partner. He was an object, a prop in Nero's grand performance of power. The act was a chilling demonstration of a Roman elite's absolute authority over the bodies of those they deemed lesser, particularly slaves. Sporus's personal agony was irrelevant. All that mattered was the emperor's public image, an image maintained through the blood and suffering of a boy who had no power to say no. In the Roman world, where a man's worth was tied directly to his dominance, the most effective political weapon was sexual slander. If you wanted to destroy a rival, you didn't just accuse him of corruption or treason, you accused him of willingly taking the submissive role with another man. This was the logic behind the whispers that followed even the most powerful figures. The great Julius Caesar, a conqueror and a symbol of Roman might, was dogged by rumors that in his youth he had enjoyed being the passive partner in a relationship. Whether true or not, the allegation was designed to undermine his authority by painting him as unmanly. This tactic reached its zenith with the infamous claim that Emperor Nero had committed incest with his own mother, Agrippina. Roman historians like Suetonius and Tacitus recorded the rumor that Agrippina initiated the relationship to maintain control over her son after he became emperor. However, credible modern historians universally regard this story as a vicious fabrication, a piece of posthumous character assassination. It was the ultimate taboo, deployed by Nero's enemies to paint him as so morally bankrupt that he would even submit to his own mother, forever cementing his dark legend. While Nero's cruelties were often public performances, the reign of Emperor Tiberius is remembered for a far more private and sinister brand of horror. As he grew older, Tiberius retreated from Rome to his luxurious villas, particularly on the idyllic island of Capri. Far from the prying eyes of the Senate and the public, this paradise reportedly became his personal kingdom of depravity. He had young boys brought to the island, officially to serve him, but ancient sources claim their true purpose was to satisfy his darkest sexual desires. The historian Suetonius paints a chilling picture of a ruler whose absolute power had curdled into monstrous corruption. It is true that Roman historians often exaggerated for dramatic effect, and some of the more lurid tales about Tiberius may be embellished, but the sheer volume and consistency of the reports from that time are damning. Even if only a fraction of it is true, the story of Tiberius on Capri stands as a terrifying testament to how unchecked power could be abused. His villa was not a home but a hunting ground, and he has gone down in history as one of Rome's most sexually corrupt emperors, a monster hiding in paradise. In all these stories of powerful men, it is easy to forget the others, the boys and young men whose lives were not their own. What was it really like to be a beloved in the Roman Empire? For a rare few, like Antinous, it might have meant experiencing genuine affection and immense privilege. But for the vast majority, like Sporus and the nameless boys on Capri, it was a life of terrifying precarity. They were often slaves or servants, seen not as people but as property, their bodies subject to the whims of their masters. Imagine being Sporus, chosen for the emperor's favour, a position that brought unimaginable luxury but came at the cost of your own flesh. Imagine being one of the boys on Capri, trapped on an island with a man who held the power of life and death over you. Their existence was a paradox. They were elevated above their station, yet they had no agency. They could be showered with gifts one day and discarded, abused, or murdered the next. They are the silent figures in history's grand portrait, their individual hopes and fears erased by the powerful men who used them and threw them away. This brings us to the central paradox of the Roman world. How could a society be so open and accepting of same-sex relationships while simultaneously fostering a system of such horrific, systemic sexual abuse? The answer lies in their rigid social hierarchy and their definition of who mattered. The rules of dominance and submission applied fully to high-status, free-born citizens. Their honor and masculinity had to be protected. But the vast majority of people in the empire, slaves, foreigners, servants, were not considered fully human in the same way. They were property. They had no rights, no honor to defend, and no legal recourse against their masters. Therefore, in the Roman mind, sexually exploiting a slave boy was not a contradiction of their values. It was an expression of them. It was a master exercising his rightful power over his property. This brutal reality explains how a culture could produce the divine love story of Hadrian and Antinous, alongside the depraved horrors of Tiberius's villa. It was never a culture of universal acceptance. It was a culture where acceptance and humanity were privileges reserved only for the powerful. In the end, the story of love, sex, and desire in ancient Rome is not really about sexuality at all. It is a timeless and brutal lesson about power. The Roman framework of dominance and submission reveals how, in any society, the mighty will seek to impose their will on the vulnerable. This system created a space for the passionate, world-altering love of Emperor Hadrian, who used his absolute power to deify the man he lost. But that very same system also enabled the performative cruelty of Nero, who mutilated a boy for his own image, and the hidden depravities of Tiberius, who used his power to consume the lives of the helpless. The Roman Empire has long since crumbled to dust, but its echoes remain. The stories of its emperors and their lovers are not just scandalous historical footnotes. They are a chilling reminder that the line between love and ownership, desire and domination is terrifyingly thin. They show us that throughout human history, absolute power is the most dangerous aphrodisiac of all, a force that can build monuments to a beloved god, or create a private island of monsters.